Okay, welcome. This is the session on learning should be fun. And my name is Betsy, and I have been around forever, and I call a lot, and I think that's pretty sufficient. I'm the moderator. The panelist today is Bear Miller. Now, did you know that since last year, Bear has become a grandfather? Well, no, we only heard last year he was going to be. It actually happened. Bear is Jonathan's grandfather. Bear also has been calling for 15 years, and he's taught over 50 mainstream classes and more than 25 plus classes, and 5 advanced A2 classes. Now wait a minute. Because he can't write so I can read it. Last month he taught a first grade, or no? Yes, please do.
What she's trying to read is the simple fact that my lineage comes from many teachers. Yeah, my mom taught first grade for 30 years. My sister teaches kindergarten. She's been doing it for 28 years. My wife teaches ECE, which is 4-year-olds. So I've been being talked to somewhere between the age of 4 and 6 my entire life. I understand what we do. So that's my lineage from where I know what I do for my teaching. Did you want?
Yeah, that works fine. And Bear is from Denver, Colorado. Give him a nice round of applause. Since he's the official panelist, I'm going to let him speak first, and then we will. I'll interject where I feel the need to. No, you are not allowed to look up at the table skirt. And Roy is going to run the remote mic. This session is being taped. Please make your comments or questions on the mic. Bear.
Thanks, Betsy. I'll go over. There is a handout up here, and we'll make it available on the website or whatever. And she has another one for afterwards. But I'm just going to hit some of the highlights of the handout, because it just kind of talks about the importance of having humor and fun in your classes, and not just in square dancing. But I got a lot of material from a gentleman in New Zealand about fun in education in the school systems, and I kind of adapted a lot of the things you see on here to our activity and how important it is. The first thing it says here is education is too important to be taken so seriously. We need to regain the importance of the joy of learning. Remember, fun is infectious. You are in charge of your own face. That's something from Patch Adams. And so people, first thing they're going to do is feed off of what you are, what you do up there. And that is the most important thing that you're ever going to find out, is they will take on your personality every time. We need to forget about the curriculum and reinvent the art and craft of teaching. Teachers who plan neat things with their students, we can negotiate learning, and we inspire learning. We can integrate and teach for connections. We keep in mind that dispositions that the students want to gain, not the fiddly content details. They're there to have a good time. We're there to help get that through to them. And the rest of it goes on and just talks about just things, and just ties up with, so let's put some magic back into teaching, and remember, fun is too important not to take too seriously. Now, when they asked me to be on this panel, I'm kind of new at this. This is my first panel I've been on with CALLERLAB, and it's a great honor to be. But I had a hard time, because what I do when I'm teaching is just what I do. I don't analyze what I do. I have a really good time with what I do. My people enjoy it. But to actually think about what I do and how I do it was interesting. So I actually asked for some help. My wife helped me a lot, which is good. But then they also said to tie it into the theme. And so first thing is this lights, camera, action. So we have to turn the lights on. It begins with your attitude. And that's the only light we ever have in our life. It's the attitude we walk into that room with. We walk in the room that this is just another class that we have to teach. That's the wrong attitude. If we play the director in the movie and we worry about our camera, and we see that these people who are coming in are potential dancers who I will enjoy seeing at my dances for years to come. They are not new friends, not just for each other, but for me. I have to care about why I'm there. And it's not just about I have to be there. I want to be there. And then the action begins. Okay? The first thing, right out of the step, I teach them how it feels to be dancing and doing it successfully. I try the first night to teach a couple of bigger moves. I teach a grand square, and I teach the old Texas star, which is nothing more than stars, and I let them feel the movement and the dancing and being happy and dancing to it. The feeling of dancing is addictive, and people want it more. They want to be talked down to. They want to be able to enjoy what they're doing. As I teach the smaller calls, I usually work on using good flow and up-tempo music so they continue to dance, not just go through the motions. I really work on working with dancing with the music. Because if they're doing that, they're going to have a smile on their face, and they're going to be feeling good about it. Their shoulders going to come up. You can watch their attitude from the first night. They kind of come in and as soon as you get some music in them and get them actually dancing, their shoulders are up, the eyes are making eye contact with other people. You can watch the happening interact. I am always continually helping using little words to help them look for things. But then I find myself in a rut later on because sometimes I have to wean them off of those little clue words so they're capable of dancing to other dancers. When I teach, I try to teach the concept of a call. I don't just teach the definition, but what the call accomplishes. Not just the boys' part, the girls' part, but I really try to keep it light. I try to keep it funny. I try to keep it just enjoyable and dancing as they're learning it, not just stopping and talking about it or doing anything else, but working through it and playing with it. I do silly little things. I think we all do a little of those things, just the little stuff, you know. Even after I've taught Yellow Rock, we've done things like that. Then I'll have the boys put their hands behind their back and keep them there and let the girls Yellow Rock them. You know, I make right-hand stars, use your thumbs, use your elbows. I mean, just anything after they've got a call down when you're just letting them feel the dancing just to make it a little lighter. I love sound effects. I like them making a sound when I make a call, and then all of a sudden they're part of the activity too and part of that reaction. I have a habit of picking on people who I've established that I can pick on them, mostly Dennis. Where's Dennis? But I kind of research who I can pick on, who my angels are, who I can pick on, and make an establishment there. But I really try to keep that to a minimum and just pick my places I'm going to do that at. My other thing I did is when I decided I was going to do this panel, was I asked my dancers in my current classes, what makes this fun? I've got this panel to be on, and I know what I do kind of, but I don't know what you see me doing as what makes it fun. And so I gave them their homework one week, and I sent them home with cards, and I said, bring these back with some comments about what makes class fun. So I'm going to give you a few examples of what they wrote back to me, and I find some of them real interesting. But first one was, you make square dance classes fun by your enthusiasm, your fun spirit. I like the end of classes when you say goodnight and offer some words of encouragement to each person on their way out the door. I really like the fact that you emphasize which calls were the most important calls in all of square dancing. I spent a night talking about runs, trades, and circulates. I said, if you can do those, the rest of square dancing is going to be easy. Next comment from somebody else was, I like the sound effects you teach. I like the whoosh and the dude and the hand claps. I like the little extra words thrown in for comic relief, like right, left, through, turn, boo-boo. Lead right, do a do-si-do with dynamite. The little stuff. Next comment was, I like the camaraderie and the friends, but mostly the hugs. Next one was the word of the week. That was the thing I did like 3 years ago as an experiment. I always had a word of the week that was just a little thing as we squared up, like the third or fourth tip was the word of the week. Something off the wall. Found some things on the internet that just had crazy meanings to them, and we had a word of the week. Just a little bit something, but it was interesting that this week this person gave me this comment that we did something 3 years ago. I like the pics of your grandson. They got a bonus for that one. Somebody else wrote, he picks on me unmercifully, and I love it. And I started thinking about this guy. I never pick on this guy. Just every time he makes a mistake, he turns around and looks at me. We make eye contact, and that's picking on him unmercifully. I never used his name in my life. But it's one of those things I sat down and talked to him. I says, when you make a mistake, you have a problem, don't turn around and look at the caller, because nobody looks at the caller except for somebody who's made a mistake. So if I'm looking at you guys and somebody makes eye contact with me from the dance floor, I know they've got a problem. And immediately they know I'm looking at them because nobody else is, and I make eye contact with them. So I try to teach him not to do that, but it was interesting. He put that comment down. Somebody else wrote patience, non-threatening, assist, and I let dancers ask questions with anybody having difficulty, and lots of hugs. Next person got a bonus too. It says the caller is a great teacher and notices everything and everybody. He repeats the calls to try and make sure that you are at least on the right track. Next comment was, Bear always makes the class fun by making it light, jokes, compliments, etc. The frustration level is low because he keeps the experience so positive. Next person wrote the extra comments, the moving class along and keeping it challenging, and humor. Great exercise, great caller. I got to pay that person. Make sure we know what we are doing before going on to another call. Makes things easy to learn. Next one is the thing I drew off earlier was learning the concept of a call, and that's the boys' part or the girls' part. I don't take it too seriously. We can laugh at ourselves when necessary. And I teach the very technical aspects of a call. The handholds in particular makes us better dancers. Lessons are great. Instructions plain and easy, and they're easy to understand. And the last thing is Bear makes the class fun and easy for the students. The goodnight circle is always fun, and the students love it. I do a goodnight circle before we say goodnight. No matter how many squares we have in the class, there's always a goodnight circle at the end. We do an allemande left and a goodnight right, left grand, and everybody gets to say goodnight to everybody. And that's one of the things that they really see. Little sayings you can find out there. John Jones has a book that he's compiled now of little sayings and square dancing that sometimes can add a little bit. Promenade your partner like a little red wagon with the handles broken, the axles dragging. Just those little things that you've learned to rhyme over the years, if you're a little different just occasionally, so you don't use the same one over and over again, interjecting, all of a sudden their ears are perking up and listening for that little stuff. Vic Cedar has a website, of course, and he has many things there you can find. But find something that works for you, that fits your personality. We can't all be Scott Byers and off the wall. We all have our own subtle little differences that work well within our aspects of what we do. Be innovative. Don't be afraid to poke fun at yourself. You know, you're the easiest target because you know you can take it. Find humor in everything aspect of our lives during the square dance sessions, because you can interject those little things. But make sure you're avoiding anything that might be touchy with somebody. The political scene, religion. I mean, you know the things you just can't touch on. No matter how funny they may seem to you. You know, there's just certain things you can't do. And don't miss a chance for a smile. But that's basically what I do.
Now, let me point out one thing. Bear talked about how he relates to the people and talks to the people and, quote, picks on certain folks. You know what he does? He treats everybody as individuals. He thinks of them as people, not, quote, the class, unquote. And that is one of the most important things, is all of these people want to be individuals. One of the things that I have down, and Roy, my husband Roy, who's going to be running our remote microphone, was chosen to do a presentation at our local dancers association, you know, basically working together to make a good square dance class. That would be between the caller and the angels, then the club, and of course the people in lessons. One of the first things that I feel as a caller when I'm teaching a set of lessons is their job during the upcoming weeks will be to learn the square dance calls. My job is to learn everybody's first name. Minimally. I don't always get to the last names, but my job is to learn everybody's first name. They are not the class. They are people. And if I can learn a little bit more about some of them, you know, when there are breaks, then I can relate to them and I can perhaps help them to learn better. One of the things that I see some people doing is that they're so busy teaching the class that they forget that this is square dancing. It is not square stand around and be instructed with no music playing. I like to, as a square dance caller instructor, treat every lesson as much like a dance as possible. I do a patter and a singer throughout the time, except if I'm teaching challenge and they're gonna come up and, you know, beat me up. But you know, mainstream and plus, I do a patter and a singer pretty much every tip. There's one exception, because I have a way of doing things that I stole from Bruce Bush many years ago. My first opening tip is just a warm-up. It doesn't use anything that they have had, except for early on when you can't do this. It doesn't use anything that they've had in the last 2 weeks. Why? Because they can't yet react to those calls as easily as other things. So I want them, they've been a week perhaps without dancing. They need to throw away whatever they thought of that week, refocus on the square dancing, and get back into it. If I use the brand new calls, they are more likely to fail. Therefore, I don't use the calls that are 2 weeks or 1 week old. I don't even use the calls that are 1 week old until I have done the second tip, where it is a full review, reteach of everything that was taught the previous week. And perhaps anything that I saw them falter in more than once in the warm-up tip, and maybe something from 2 weeks ago if I'm really afraid about that. So, and that is the tip that I do not use a singing call on. The reason being that I believe that we cannot keep the dancers on their feet too long and continue to have their attention. They have an attention span. They get tired. They need the break. They need to get water. They need to get refreshments. They need to go to the bathroom, all of the above. And therefore, I don't want to keep them on the floor more than 15, 20 minutes. So the review tip, because I'm stopping and reviewing and reteaching calls, I set a timer, and I set the timer for like 10 to 15 minutes. Then I reset it for maybe another 5. But because I've had them on their feet at that point for 20 minutes, I am not going to keep them up for a singing call. No matter how relaxing, I'm already past the time that they need a break for. That's my theory, and it works pretty well for me. And then after that, it's a teach and a singing call, and a teach and a singing call. I myself personally feel that dancers who have just learned a new call are not yet capable of having it included in a singing call. I know other people feel that they can. And it's part of what works for you. It's what Bear said. You have to pick what works for you. I like to put a new call in a singing call after they've done it in patter for a couple of weeks. And I feel they're going to react and be comfortable. Because I think a singing call should be as close to what it is okay, it's working now. I believe that a singing call should be as close to what it is at a dance as it can be. And if I have to slow it down or, short time it too much, it doesn't feel like dancing. All of the sets should feel as much like dancing as possible. Stop the music, give the instruction, and then put the music back on and practice. I don't have to drill them and drill them and drill them without music. And there's a friend of mine who shall remain nameless, and they were teaching advanced, and so I was teaching plus in the same building. I went upstairs to use the ladies' room. I went past where this person was teaching, used the ladies' room, came back out, went back downstairs. And in all that time, I never heard any music. And I said to a friend of mine who was in the class, "Does so-and-so ever put the music on?" And they said, "Sometimes." And about 2 weeks later, my friend came down and said, "We have achieved the ultimate." And this caller did the entire night without ever putting music on. That's not dancing. That's like the army, and you don't even get paid. You're paying to be drilled. Work with the club people so that the students are, they have badges. We greet them by name. We organize social events. If the club is doing something social, and the class should be included. They're part of the group from day one. It isn't like, okay, you're ready to join us now. It's, we're including you. You are part of us. And it's a social aspect that will keep people in the activity. If somebody misses a class, have somebody from the group, might be I have people that are called archangels. They're like the class administrator. Might be the vice president of the club, whatever you call the title. Have that person, make sure that person calls them up and says, Oh, Roy, you weren't out last Tuesday. Are you okay? Did you have a cold? We missed you. We'd like to see you back next week. And Betsy will make sure that you get everything you missed. And one of the things I tell people is, I'm going to get everything. If you miss a week, don't come back in panicky about, I didn't do this call and I looked at the book and I don't understand it and blah, blah, blah. You are not allowed to panic until after the second tip. Once I have reviewed and retaught the call, if you don't understand it, that's the time to come to me and say, Betsy, I know you did the review, I missed last week, and it still doesn't make any sense, and we will work with you. And a lot of times people think if they've missed a week or two, they just can't come back. We should be, as class teachers, inclusive, not exclusive. If you work with the people, if they want to come back, then you can probably bring them back into the group. And if I have to sacrifice my schedule a little bit to make it work, that's what I'm going to do, because it's more important to get those people out and dancing with us than it is for me to teach. I said on the paper that I was going to teach call A, call B, and call C. So we need to teach call A, call B, and call C. Nope. And I have my own brand of humor, and somehow, luckily, I've been able to find things that are funny and just keep them in mind. I don't know why it's funny, but early on I teach them a few calls, and I have heads pass through, and I say, okay, we're going to learn separate and go around the outside, and I have them all turn their back on their partner, walk around the outside. Now you're going past the two people in the side couples, blah, blah, blah. Meet your partner back at home. That's called separate, go around the outside, pass through, and get back home. For some reason, the dancers find this hilarious. I don't know why, but every time I do that, they all giggle. And so I will say it with the absolute most serious tone I can say. Now, the name for this is, and it makes them laugh. One of the other things that I do, new dancers to any program, whether they've walked in the door cold off the street, whether they're learning Challenge 1, new dancers to a program, people in lessons are petrified about their own mistakes. And the more important a person is, this is a totally non-scientific study, mind you, but the more important a person is in their private life, the less tolerant of their own mistakes that they will be. And if I have been teaching every year something every year since 1969, and I have yet to be able to totally diffuse that. Yes, I'm old, Roy. I heard that. But the point being, I have yet to be able to diffuse that thing entirely. I can work at it, but I just know that's a syndrome, and I'm just going to have to move on sometimes. If somebody is continually making a mistake and I haven't figured out how to get the right words for it to click in their brain, I may just move to something else for a while and go back to what gives them confidence so that they feel comfortable again, and then approach it from another way. And that's also part of it. It is not their fault, anyone in the class, if I have failed to find the right words to connect with their learning style. It's my fault as a teacher. And I can make jokes about, boy, I didn't expect that. It must have been something I said. Let me think. What else? You got a comment? Good.
Yeah, I got a couple comments while you put yourselves back together. A couple comments about her way she does her lessons with her singing calls and stuff. I do things a little different. I'm sure we all do. But I don't have a singing call till the end of the night most of the year. I want to spend as much time doing things as I can. I never try to turn my music off ever. It's always turned down low and in the background, even when I'm just instructing them. So it's always there. And I always try to keep the music really up and light, but I try to have it match up with what we're doing. But I've used very little boom chuck music. I try to make it be almost singing call music that they're hearing all night anyway, so they're not missing that feel of it. But I try to say the singing call. Then I spend a night that is part of my lesson plans that I do a night where I teach them singing calls and what's going to happen in singing calls. So they have a flavor for what we've been doing it all this time, but now we're actually going to look at how a singing call happens, what goes on with it. You know, if you go to normal dance, there's not going to be the same kind of a time to adjust or to get back into lines. It's just going to happen. So if you know what the progressions are, how the structure of the 7 parts of it is, the opener, the middle break, the figures, they have a concept then of what's going on. I've noticed that makes a difference. The other thing she talked about was a walk upstairs. I always try to plan a couple times each year to go visit somebody else's class to see what they're doing, what's happening in their class, and I've always stolen something from somebody every time I go. You know, whether I go up to Dennis's class and where he's been teaching for 2 years, I'm going to learn something from Dennis, or I'm going to go over to Charlie Robertson's and go to his class and I'll steal 5 or 6 different things from Charlie. But, you know, I'm always going to try to make 2 or 3 trips each year to somebody else's class to spend some time and watching. And then the adaptability to be able to change a singing call figure to match up with whatever they're doing. And if they did the call particularly well that night, I may incorporate it because they did it really well. I won't expect them to do it, but I will be adaptable to be able to throw that into the figure if I need to be. So have a well-based background to be able to do that kind of things is very important.
1, 2, 1, 2. There's a panel about changing singing call figures later this afternoon. I like to do the singing call. I don't do them I like to do them every tip because I know that I do not have the discipline to call as quickly at a class as I will at a dance. If I see a square faltering at a class during the patter, I'm going to give them that extra beat. And if I don't do the singing calls, I may never get them quite up to where the speed they need to be to dance with a club. So one of the ways I discipline myself to getting them up to speed, because that's part of what we have to do. We don't just have to teach them the calls. We have to teach them to respond to the calls fast enough to survive at the club or at an open dance. And singing calls are my way of making sure I discipline myself enough so that I'm making them dance at the same speed I would call at a club. Because you just said it. There's no recovery time in a singing call. You got 64 beats of music and 64 beats of dancing. So that's one of the ways I use. And saying all that, I am teaching a class at a club in Philadelphia where I'm actually teaching 2 different classes in the same night, alternating tips. I don't do as many singing calls there because I'm keeping it very closely timed. Mike Jacobs is working in the other room with advanced and challenge, but some of the advanced people will come over while they're doing the challenge and Angel the plus class. So when Mike's done with the tip, I need to be done with my mainstream tip so that the dancers can interact. All of that is discipline, and that's part of being a good teacher, is to make sure that you discipline yourself so that you don't abuse the dancers, so that they're not kept on the floor. I was recently working with somebody, Bear was talking about humor, and I was recently working with someone who's working on calling, and her comment to me was, we used to dance to you 30 years ago, and you were very precise, but we were petrified of you. You scared us to death. And now we come out to your dances and we smile and laugh and everything's lighthearted. And I'm still trying to be precise. I just have figured out how to do it and make it funny at the same time. And that takes work. Got any other comments? If you, let's see. Bear said it. You need to be prepared to be flexible enough to put singing calls, change the singing call figure and put something. If they're really doing a call well, you need to be able to put it into the singing call right there. First place, you need to be able to be flexible enough to change the figures in singing calls. There's a friend of mine whose sister learned in Virginia, and he came to me and told me this story because he knew I'd bounce off the ceiling in reaction. He was just jerking my chain, but it's true. His sister learned, and I don't know the name of the caller, 2/3 of the way through the lessons. the caller informed them that they were now ready to do a singing call. What that means to me is that caller had no concept of how to do a singing call with a figure other than the one that came on the sheet with the record. Everyone who's teaching lessons should be able to do a singing call from day one, even if you don't want to do them every single tip, even if you only do 1 or 2 a night. You should be able to do a singing call with five calls. Circle left, circle right, promenade, swing, and dose it up. Is that 5? Good. Close enough? What? I thought I said it. Good. Thanks, Randy. The short naps are good. He just had lunch. Yes, that's the problem. Oh, and the thing about Roy, when he made the side comment to Randy, I somehow have a pretty good ability to hear the comments that I'm not supposed to hear. So
I never hear those.
I do, and I'll end up reacting and starting to chuckle when somebody says something they thought I wasn't going to hear, and I'll start to chuckle. So I don't actually pick on the person for saying it, but because I responded, they go, "She hears everything. She's always watching me." If it's a bigger group, people wonder, well, how do I know when there's something going wrong? And if you watch the entire floor and keep scanning, there's a break in the pattern. I may not know what went wrong, but the break in the pattern tells me I got to do something over. I've got to stop and go back. Yes, I was just going to say, do we have comments, questions, or whatever from the floor? Are you awake? One of the things before we start running the microphone, I said before, the higher the position in the outside, the more problem the person has with their own mistakes. Another thing that I found, totally non-scientific study, is square dancers, especially brand new square dancers, expect that they have to be absolutely perfect. And I was we have a class dance for our Callers Association partway through lessons, end of February. I was at this class dance. These people were scared to death. They were absolutely rigid because they were going to make mistakes. And Roy is a big baseball fan. So my speech to them, and you are all welcome to take this back home and use it. My speech to them was, Roy's a big baseball fan. I've been to Cooperstown. I read the statistics. And you can get into the Baseball Hall of Fame batting 300. That's technically less than 1 out of 3 things. So why are we expecting to bat 1,000? We're going to make mistakes. Good dancers simply make recoveries. And then it was right after the Olympics, and I said, okay, I've been watching the Winter Olympics. I watch the skaters. In the summertime, I really like watching the gymnasts. If they make a mistake and they fall down, they don't just stalk off the floor or whatever. They get back up and they finish their routine, and at the end of their routine, they fling their arm up in the air, stand proud, and they finish. I said, so what I want all of you to do now, at the end of the patter, I want you to finish. And all of a sudden, I had people finishing. The only problem I ran into was there was a lady who got really enthusiastic, and she flung her arm up in the air and smacked her corner in the face. But all of a sudden, they felt better about themselves. Whatever you can find, and if you find the Olympic finish works for you, take it home and use it. But if whatever you can find to make the dancers feel good about themselves. Bear says he does gives a lot of praise. He notices what's right, and he makes the humorous comments. But that will make the class fun. If they're happy and feeling good about themselves, it will be fun.
As I say, before we get to comments and everything, I do have pictures of my grandchild up here. If there aren't good comments from the floor and extended ones, you'll look at them twice and feel good about it.
Promises. Okay, comments? Randy.
Randy Doherty, Mesa, Arizona. You know, you say that challenge dancers don't like singing calls, and it's pretty much a common fact. They don't like doing singing calls for many reasons. But in Mesa, I've got my dancers pretty well trained that when I call, I'm going to say, I'm going to do a singing call, they cheer. And if they don't cheer, I do 2 singing calls.
Okay, who's first?
Virgil Forbes from Maryland. I've been real lucky my last several years in my biggest club, my biggest class. Somehow the first night of class, there always seems to emerge a class clown. And they are such a treasure and such a blessing because they generate a lot of humor, so I don't have to. I don't tell jokes real well. About the farthest I get is when I put the scoreboard on the blackboard behind me, showing the dancers and the callers, and showing the callers, 4 runs, 2 hits, no errors, and the caller 1 run, 1 hit, 3 errors, and they seem to buy that.
I'd say we have a caller in Denver who ends up telling 3 jokes every night, and is an excellent joke teller. That's his shtick. Works well for him. I can't tell a joke for the life of me, but I can be hilarious. Same kind of thing.
Yeah, Dennis O'Neill from Colorado. I would take one exception with your baseball analogy. From the very first night, I tell my dancers they will never make a mistake. They cannot make a mistake. It's impossible to make a mistake. And they have this strange look on their face, which I didn't say. But some of you are going to get very creative, And then it's fun from then on. But as long as you're keeping it fun and laughing, and I know Bear, I pretty much probably mimic him a lot, there's a lot of contact, a lot of personal connection during the breaks, and that really helps the dancers to relax and to have fun.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dennis. Square dancers do creative applications of my choreography. And, the comment, because some angels usually going, well, you didn't call it the way we danced it. And my reply to that is, that's because I can't keep up with you guys. But I am taking notes, and I'll try it next time. But it's never give a nasty response to that, because that's said because they're feeling weird. I got a couple hands. Okay.
A small demonstration, Ron Black, Los Angeles, California. A small demonstration, I will use our esteemed publisher and the lady sitting across the aisle from them. If you will stand up, because new dancers are not huggable. It's a personal thing. So as I turn to the lady, gentlemen, put your hands on her hips. Ladies, put your hands on his wrists. Please do that much for me. Gentlemen, the farther your arms go around the lady, her hands will go up your arms slowly. So gentlemen, as you reach around her hands will go up your arms. Ladies, if his hands are in the wrong spot on your back, keep going up, girls. Keep going higher. If his hands are not where you want them, his throat is. And this always generates a laugh and makes the dancers feel more comfortable about face-to-face movement.
Daryl Clendon in Portland, Oregon. I just started teaching this year. Again. For a club. Again. First club I've had in about 18 years. And I always felt that teaching was so important to do that class and get those dancers taught. And I learned something this year that I didn't realize before. It's a lot more important to make club dancers and make a group out of the people than it is to teach them to dance. And we started taking a break in the middle of the class. Now, we only have a 2-hour class. And to take that valuable time out of the middle of the class that I could be teaching them more movements, just it kind of made me a little uncomfortable at first, because not only is it a break in the continuity of the teaching, but it's valuable time. I could be teaching them something. But they learned a whole lot more than I did about each other and being with each other by taking that break, going downstairs, sitting down, having a cup of coffee and some cookies, and visiting with each other across the table. Wow. I'll tell you what, we kept a huge percentage of that class, and they are more active at this point in time than the dancers we had before the class started. They are more than just square dancers. They're a club. I would recommend that.
That sounds like a good idea. Roy reminded me of something that he wants me to bring up before we get back to Virgil, and that is, if you have angels at your class, and I know there's varying opinions, and some people say, oh, I'm never going to have any angels, and some people go, yeah, the more the better. You need, as a class teacher, to talk to the angels so they understand how to help. I made a study at our Labor Day weekend. Actually, it wasn't a study, I just observed. There was Mike Jacobs' daughter, Christy, was there with some friends of hers and some younger dancers. And one of the young friends was not a square dancer, but they wanted to pull him through a tip. So they set up a square to pull him through. And he was doing quite well. But there was one young dancer in early 20s who was not in the square. And she was there to help. And she helped at the top of her lungs in a considerable volume and was waving her arms and screaming and yelling and whatever. And I'm sure if you ask her, she sincerely believed that she was helping. I'm sure if you ask the people who grab the dancer and go, over here, Bear, I need you, that they believe they're helping. And we as class teachers need to let the angels know help should be subtle, gentle, and not given until the people have a chance to figure things out on their own. Meeting with them beforehand works for a while. Meeting with them when you've observed that the behavior has changed again will work for a while. And then you need to remind them again. And you may want to talk to your class coordinator to say, we need to talk to this angel again because they're busy helping to the detriment. One of the comments that I make periodically, just to remind everybody, to be gentle, is I want all my dancers here in this group to go home with all of the appendages they came with. No one is supposed to take any extra appendages home with them. So that's an important thing. And we need to, it used to be that if somebody was done lessons and they really weren't a good dancer, you said, well, come back to the class next year an angel. That's a detriment to the class. The caller teacher and the class coordinator need to have the guts, the internal fortitude to say to this person, John, I don't think you're quite comfortable enough with the figures yet to come out and dance with the club. We want you to come out and the club picnic is this August, and we want you to be there. But what we'd really like you to do would be to go through the lessons again so that you are comfortable and feel good about your dancing instead of sometimes you look just so nervous. Something nice and polite like that. You have to say, so-and-so, you're not quite ready to graduate. If there's a place to bring him in partway through again, that's what you need to do. Don't say, John, come out an angel next year, and with going, he's really going to get the calls that way. It doesn't work. Also, styling flourishes. Talk to the angels about if there's styling in your club, it needs to be limited until the dancers know where they're going. If you're technically doing something with a left arm turn and the styling is to grab both hands and turn, the person who's learning the move doesn't know what arm they're turning with. because you're using both hands. They need to know it's a left arm turn until they're comfortable enough to use both hands but still know which direction they're going, which direction they're turning. So that's part of the thing. Now, going back to picking on John, just using him as an example. John, I may say, John, you're doing great, and you will be, you come out an angel for the first part of the class. But at this point, when we got to Ferris wheel, after that, you missed some classes, you're not comfortable, so I want you to be a paying member of the class after that, because what's going to happen is, if you're an angel, we might bump you out of the square. If you pay to do the last part of the lessons again, we'll guarantee you a place in the square, and then you'll be able to solidify and get what you missed. But now, what did I just do? I was as tactful as possible. I never said, John, you're never going to make it, and you really need to do this again. I talked around it, and I found a solution. And hopefully they'll take it well. If not, that's up to the club officers to determine what they want to do. If they want to take the person's money and have them be in a square or be ignored sometimes. If a new dancer, tell the angels, because this is one of my strong points. A lot of times, new dancers are afraid to approach the caller with questions. Bear says he encourages questions. I encourage questions. But somehow, some of these people think that we are really scary people, and they don't want to look stupid asking the question to us, but they'll ask it to an angel. I would prefer to have the angel bring the question to me. Because one of my feelings is questions are, this always comes off sounding wrong, but questions are like cockroaches, in a good sense. The theory being that for every cockroach you see crawling someplace, there's a bunch in the walls. For every person that dares to ask a question, there's a bunch of people who had that same question but thought it was too stupid to ask and didn't want to appear dumb. So if somebody's brave enough to ask the question, I might want to bring that whole point out in the next tip, because I expect there's a whole bunch of other people that want to know whatever this, I failed to communicate with this person, there may be a whole bunch of others. And that's one way to encourage questions. I'll stand up there and say, one of the class members, who shall remain nameless, asked Roy this question, and Roy brought it to me, and I think it's important enough to bring it up to everybody, because obviously I haven't made myself clear. So let's approach this from another thing. But I'll say that somebody asked the question, because that gives them credit. I may not say their name, but then hopefully what will happen is people will find me more approachable. Okay, Roy says time. Let's go back to Virgil.
Going back to something Daryl said about the socializing, it wasn't my idea. It was one of my first-year angels. We were in a hall a little bigger than this, 2 squares up. The chairs were lined up in 3 rows across the back, and she said, I don't like this. So she rearranged the chairs into 3 little conversation groups, 6 or 7 chairs in a U shape, which got everybody talking face-to-face during breaks, which helped. And then I started hanging around behind the back of the conversation group, eavesdropping and picking up questions to answer over the microphone to everyone. So it's kind of a combination of the dancers thought of it, the dancers are talking. It just helps me know where the class is.
Comments, questions? Over there.
Elmer Claycomb from Prescott Valley, Arizona. A couple of thoughts on singing calls. Used correctly, I think they're a way to really get the class involved. I happen to use, any of you know the one at the line goes, could you, would you, ain't you gonna, if I ask you, would you want to be my baby tonight? Now, very few people can get through all those words with you. But if you get them, okay, come on, sing along, then okay, now you got it. And they're trying to stumble through it, and then you help them out. I find that if I'm doing that, it needs to be extremely simple figures, because people are trying to think of the words to whatever song it is. So it's just a way to get more participation. Another thing is, I probably, like everybody else, started out, didn't have singing calls I could build with my class, and through the years I've ended up cataloging singing calls all by level, and I use them very, very regularly as part of the class, but also having the ability to really back off the complexity of them. But through the years I've got to where I've changed completely from where I had almost none to where I use them very regularly as part of that class program.
Yeah, some other things you can do. Charlie Brown would be a good one to get everybody involved. Okay, dancers, your line is. And I'll say, as soon as I tell you your line, you're going to know what singing call I'm going to do. Okay, dancers, your line is, why's everybody always picking on me? And somebody immediately goes, Charlie Brown. Also, once I'm partway through lessons, if people have heard different types of music, for the last tip of the evening, I'll say, does anybody have a request? And let them pick the music. You know, I'll say it before the tip starts so I can get it organized. But maybe they want to dance to a particular piece of music, and that'll make them feel included also. Different styles of music will make different people happy.
We're talking about, he's getting those pictures out. I'm going to say something. Oh, did I say I hadn't taught a new dancer class in 16 years? 18 years. Well, I said I didn't have a club for that long. I did teach a class at least one a year, every year. But this was the first one for a club, where the dancers were expected to be a part of the group by the time the class was done. And we're talking about learning is fun. I depend a whole bunch on the club to create that fun, because the club is the one that has to win over those new dancers. Yeah, I can teach them. That's not a problem. And I don't want to win them over to Daryl Clendenham. I want to win them over to the club. So I encourage the club to be there with them as angels, not for the teaching, but so they can become friends. They can become a part of the group before they ever graduate. And having fun means something like one thing they did over a period of 2 weeks of class there. 1 week after I went back upstairs to get everything ready to dance again, they stayed just a couple of minutes longer downstairs. And somebody in the club, I haven't figured out who yet, had it all planned that the next week they would bring their cell phones. And when we went down for the cookies and the coffee, somebody stayed up there and hid cell phones all over the stage. And when they came back up and I was calling, all of a sudden a cell phone somewhere over in that corner on the stage went off. It stopped ringing. Then one back over here went off, and it stopped ringing. They had cell phones all over that, but they were out there, just having a great time at my expense. I loved it. It was fun, but it made them a part of what was going on. I'll tell you what, you need to win those people over with fun stuff. The choreography, the calling, the music, the dancing, that's a very important part of what the whole thing is about. But the people just having fun together is more what it's about. And concentrate on that. I always cry a lot.
One of my shticks is always something's going to happen during my class time when I have another caller come in and replace me for a night. It never fails. I mean, most of us all have that problem, and I always leave something as being my class for the substitute teacher. Usually it's the first tip, no matter what they call. You do some obscure call. They'll say bow your partner corners 2, and they'll say join hand circle left, and as soon as they do that, then they'll do a do paso. And we practiced that the whole week before, 2 or 3 times, and they just get the greatest thing out of it, because then we're a team, and the new caller always feels welcome, doesn't he, Dennis, that way? But So most callers now, when I've asked them to fill in for me, they come in trying to anticipate what I might have given them to do, so I try to be as obscure as possible.
And Daryl, okay.
I'm hard to obscure, is that what you said? Have you never not seen Stealth Bear Mode?
You know, Daryl made a great point about I'm not teaching them to follow Daryl Clendenin. I'm teaching them to be, you know, part of the dance scene, a part of the club, have part, you know, of our society and have fun. One of the things that I try and do is teach the people I'm teaching so that they could dance to any caller here in this room. I want them to be able to respond to any caller. And one of the things that I believe that not everybody teaches enough is how to recover. We don't teach them what to do when the square breaks down. We don't teach them what to do, and we need to do that. Whatever mode you pick, we need to do that. I personally have them square up first and get back in as soon as I call Alabama left. And then later on I may teach making lines when we're into lines. But I teach it because I found out I hadn't one night. College age club, quick learners, we're last dance of the semester. The new dancers are there. This is back in the 80s. I think we had 6 or 7 squares on the floor. I'm calling away. Everybody's going great. Something happened. One square broke down. A lot of new people all in the same square. You know how they congregate that way. Okay. I said, you got lines of 4, go forward and back. What did I say, 6 or 7 squares? 5 or 6 squares went forward and back, and 1 square stood. And I said, you've got lines of 4, go forward and back. And the other squares went forward and back, and the other 1 square stood. And I said, make lines of 4, go forward and back. And yep, it happened again. At this point, however, the squares nearest these poor folks were all going, make lines of 4. It didn't help a bit. And whose failure was it but mine, because I hadn't taught them about that way of getting back into things. And I have not forgotten it. It was sometime in the 80s. I remember the room. So I know we were still on campus. And I have never neglected since then to teach people that you've got to make the recoveries. You're not going to be perfect necessarily. You're going to do those creative applications. And if you do the creative application and the square gets disrupted, that's not a problem. If you just freeze and panic is not our friend. And I teach them how to make the recoveries. Then they can go out and dance to anybody, and if they get caught by surprise when Bear calls something funny, at least they'll make the recovery.
As we're wrapping this up, I just want to thank Betsy so much for being the moderator on my very first time, my virgin time of being on the panel. Want to thank each and every one of you for coming out today. Hope you have fun with your classes and do everything you can. And as a reward for being such a wonderful job today, you're allowed to come up here before you leave and tell me how cute my grandson is, okay?
Just one last, if I could make a comment to finish up. Roy Gatta, also from New Jersey. And the best thing that ever happened to Betsy's career was about 25 years ago, she got fired. She'd gotten a job. She'd always wanted teaching for the premier club in our area. And after about 2 years, they came to her and said, you're the most thorough, precise teacher we've ever had, but you're not fun. And they fired her. And it was crushing. And it made her adopt an attitude that if you apply it to your lessons, you really can't go wrong. Imagine that it's the last dance you will ever call. And how do you want to be remembered? And they take that to every class, every dance. Okay? I'm not going to be able to, this is the last one I'll ever call, and that's the one I'm going to remember. Make it fun.
Thank you all for your participation. Oh yeah, thank you, Roy, for running the microphone.